Alpha King was discovered fainting in a ruined forest by Omega, then claimed her aura was familiar. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main characters. In a forest long abandoned by the light of the sun, where the trees stood gnarled and twisted like the remains of forgotten gods, an unusual scene unfolded. Deep within the shadows of this ruined wilderness, Alpha King Ethan Hawke lay unconscious, his form slumped against the cold, jagged rocks. His regal armor, now tarnished and battered, seemed to mock the once indomitable strength he was known for. The forest had claimed its toll on him, but it was not the forest alone that had brought him to this state. It was the battle, a battle so fierce that even the mightiest of rulers could not walk away unscathed. The air around him felt thick with something unspoken, a haunting stillness that only the Omega could understand. Omega Liao Winters had been drawn to this very place. She had felt it, this strange pull, like a whisper calling her in the wind. Her instincts, honed over years of training, told her that something momentous was unfolding, something that could change the course of her life. When she arrived at the clearing, there he was, the Alpha King, the mighty ruler of the Northern Territories, crumpled and defeated on the ground. For a moment, her breath caught in her chest, and she stood there, unsure what to do. Should she help him, or leave him to fate, as many would have done? But as her gaze fell upon him, she felt it, a surge of familiarity, something deep within her stirring. His aura, it was undeniable. It was as if she had known him for lifetimes, as if their paths had crossed before. Her heart raced. Was this the same king whose name echoed in the halls of power, whose rule extended over vast lands and armies? Yet now, he was nothing more than a fallen king in the wilderness. She knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his chest, sensing the faint pulse of life still within him. Ethan Hawke, she whispered, though she wasn't sure why she said his name. She had never met him, not personally, but in this moment, it felt like she had. With a gentle but firm touch, she reached for his shoulder and shook him lightly. Wake up, Alpha King. The forest won't be kind to those who remain lost in it. Ethan's eyelids fluttered. A groan escaped his lips as his eyes slowly opened, meeting her gaze. Confusion clouded his features at first, then recognition. His brow furrowed as he stared at the woman kneeling beside him. She was not like the others he had met. There was something different about her, something he couldn't quite place. But the sensation was overwhelming. His mind raced. Your aura, he said, his voice hoarse. It feels familiar, like I've known it for years. Leah's heart skipped a beat. Her instincts were right. There was a connection here. And in that moment, everything about the world around them seemed to change. What was once a chance encounter, a mere meeting between an Omega and an Alpha King, now felt like the beginning of something much larger. Something that neither of them could have anticipated. As Ethan's eyes locked onto Leah, the world seemed to still. The pain in his body faded into the background, replaced by the overwhelming sensation of something ancient stirring within him. His head throbbed, but it was not the physical pain that bothered him. It was the connection he felt, an unexplainable pull toward this woman. Her presence was like a flicker of light in the dark, familiar yet distant. He could sense something about her, something deeper than he had ever encountered before. Who are you? Ethan asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Leah's gaze softened, her eyes filled with understanding, yet still a hint of mystery. I'm Liao Winters. I felt your aura. It led me here, she replied, her words calm but heavy with meaning. Your aura feels like I have known it for a long time, but I don't know how. Ethan's confusion deepened. He had never been one to believe in the supernatural, yet the way her words rang with truth made him question everything he had known. How? Is that possible? He muttered under his breath. Liao remained silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly, as she studied him. I don't know, she said softly, but I think we are connected, in ways we do not understand yet. Ethan's brow furrowed, trying to make sense of her words. His body ached from the remnants of the battle, but his mind was now consumed with this strange connection he had never expected to find. He had heard rumors of Omegas who could sense things, feel things beyond the ordinary, but he never thought he would meet one, let alone feel such a pull toward her. I don't understand, he admitted, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling in his mind. I don't either, Leah confessed, but I know what I felt when I found you here. It wasn't just the physical state you're in. It was something more. She stood up slowly, brushing off the dirt from her cloak, her eyes never leaving Ethan. You're not alone in this, Ethan. There's something bigger at play here. Ethan's mind raced, but his body was exhausted, each breath a struggle. Despite his power, despite the countless battles he had fought, he felt strangely vulnerable in her presence, as though she knew something he did not. And that unsettled him more than anything else. I don't even know why I'm here, he muttered. Leah's eyes softened with compassion. Maybe the forest called you here. Maybe it's a test. But you're not alone in this. For a long moment, they simply stood there, the weight of their unspoken thoughts hanging between them. Ethan, the mighty Alpha King, was used to being in control, used to being the one who knew everything. But here, in this ruined forest, in the presence of this mysterious Omega, he felt as though he were just as lost as anyone else. His hand instinctively reached for the hilt of his sword, but he hesitated. The world around him felt different. The forest felt alive, as though the trees themselves were watching him. Do you know what this place is? Ethan asked, his voice quiet but filled with an edge of curiosity. Leah's gaze shifted to the dense woods surrounding them, her expression unreadable. I've never been here before, but there's something ancient about this place. Something that speaks to me, she said. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant to be here, that somehow their meeting in this ruined forest was no accident. A feeling that neither of them could yet explain, but one that would shape the course of everything to come. As the silence between them stretched on, the weight of the forest seemed to press in on Ethan and Leah. The air was thick with mystery, each rustling leaf and snapping twig carrying a sense of urgency, as if the forest itself was waiting for something to unfold. Ethan could feel it, the oppressive stillness that hung over the clearing like a shroud. He had faced countless battles in his life, but none had felt as uncertain as this moment. He had no answers, only questions about the forest, about the strange connection he felt with Leah, and about his own purpose here. Leah seemed to sense his growing unease. Her gaze softened, and she took a step closer, though she kept a respectful distance. You're not alone in this, Ethan, she repeated, her voice gentle but firm. I can feel it too. Whatever this place is, whatever brought you here, it's important. We are meant to be here. Ethan looked at her, his sharp eyes studying her face. Her calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. I've spent my life controlling my destiny, he said, his voice low. But this feels like I've lost control. Like something else is at work here. Leah nodded, her expression thoughtful. I understand. I've never been one to believe in fate either. But sometimes, it's the things we don't understand that guide us the most. Ethan exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the twisted trees around them. He had always relied on his strength, his position as Alpha King, to guide him through life. But now, in this strange, ruined forest, he felt like a mere man, vulnerable and uncertain. Do you think we'll find answers here? He asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Leah's eyes sparkled with quiet confidence. I don't know, she said honestly, but I believe we will find something. Perhaps not the answers we expect, but something that will make sense in time. Ethan was silent for a long moment, contemplating her words. It was difficult for him to let go of the need for control, to admit that there were forces at play beyond his understanding. Yet, something in Leah's presence, in the calm assurance she exuded, made him feel a glimmer of hope. Then let's find it, he said, his voice steady once again. Leah smiled, the corners of her lips lifting in a way that made her seem both strong and approachable. Together, they began walking deeper into the forest, the shadows of the trees stretching long and dark around them. As they moved, the air grew cooler, and the scent of damp earth and moss filled their senses. The forest seemed to change with each step, the path twisting and turning, leading them further into its heart. The further they went, the more Ethan felt the weight of the unknown pressing in on him. He could not explain why, but he sensed that they were being watched, not by any one person, but by something much older, much more powerful. The deeper they ventured, the more it felt as though the forest itself was alive, a silent observer of their every move. "Do you feel that?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Leah stopped and closed her eyes for a moment, as if listening to something beyond the audible. "Yes," she said softly. "It's like we're being guided. But by what, I don't know." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He could not explain it, but the sensation was undeniable. There was something about this forest, something that tugged at his very soul. And whatever it was leading them somewhere. "We should keep moving," Leah suggested, breaking the silence. Ethan nodded, the uncertainty still gnawing at him. But there was no turning back now. The forest had already chosen its path for them, and he knew they would have to follow it, no matter where it led. Together, they continued deeper into the ruins, unaware of the secrets that awaited them in the shadows. Their journey had only just begun, and already they could feel the weight of destiny drawing them forward. The deeper Ethan and Leah ventured into the forest, the more the atmosphere seemed to shift. The air grew thick with an almost tangible presence, like a weight pressing down on their very souls. It was as if the trees themselves were watching them, their ancient branches creaking in the wind, telling stories of times long past. Each step forward felt, both like progress and a step into the unknown. The further they went, the more Ethan felt the strange pull of the forest, as though it was drawing them to a specific point, a place yet to be revealed. It was unsettling, but at the same time, there was an undeniable force guiding them. "Do you feel that?" Ethan asked again, his voice low and cautious. Leah stopped in her tracks, her senses alive to the same subtle change in the air. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as though she was listening to something far beyond the rustling of the leaves or the crackling of twigs beneath their feet. "Yes," she answered softly, her voice barely a whisper. "It's like we're walking on the edge of something ancient." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had always prided himself on his ability to read people and situations, to sense danger long before it arrived. But this was different. It wasn't danger that he felt. It was something deeper, something almost comforting in its presence, as though the forest itself was alive, aware of their every move. The two of them continued to walk in silence, their footfalls muffled by the soft earth beneath them. As they moved further into the heart of the forest, the path grew narrower, the trees closing in on either side, their branches intertwining to form a natural archway. The sense of being guided was becoming stronger, and though Ethan didn't fully understand it, he knew they had no choice but to follow. "It's like the forest is pulling us in," Leah murmured, her voice tinged with wonder. "Do you think we're meant to find something?" Ethan glanced at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't sure what to make of her words, but there was something in her tone, a quiet certainty, that made him wonder if she knew more than she was letting on. "Maybe," he replied, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "But what? And why?" Leah didn't answer right away. Instead, she kept her gaze fixed ahead, her expression unreadable. Ethan followed her line of sight and saw nothing but the twisted trees and the dimming light ahead. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for them at the end of the path. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, the forest growing denser and more silent with each step. The temperature dropped slightly, and Ethan's breath came out in soft puffs, visible in the cool air. As they reached a clearing, the dense forest opened up, revealing a large, ancient stone structure. It was half sunken into the earth, covered in moss and ivy, as though it had been forgotten by time itself. The stone was weathered, but there was an unmistakable aura about it, something that drew Ethan in despite the unease that lingered in the pit of his stomach. Leah stopped just short of the structure, her expression softening. "This is it," she said, her voice almost reverent. Ethan's heart raced. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," Leah admitted, "but I think this is what the forest was guiding us toward." Ethan stepped closer to the structure, the sense of familiarity growing stronger the nearer he got. There was a pulsing energy in the air, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. He reached out to touch the stone, his hand trembling slightly as his fingers brushed against the cold surface. The moment his hand made contact, a rush of memories flooded his mind. Visions of battles fought, victories won, faces he couldn't recognize, and a strange sense of déjà vu. What's happening? Ethan breathed, pulling his hand back as if burned. Leah stepped forward, her eyes wide with realization. "I think this is where it all begins," she said softly, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Ethan stared at the structure, his mind racing. What had he just touched? What were these memories? And why did they feel so familiar? The answers he had been seeking for so long were so close now, and yet they seemed just out of reach. One thing was clear, this was only the beginning. As Ethan stood in front of the ancient stone structure, the pulsing energy continued to hum around him, reverberating deep within his chest. His mind raced with questions, his fingers still tingling from the contact with the cold stone. What had just happened? The images that flashed through his mind were both familiar and foreign, a chaotic blend of memories that seemed to belong to someone else. But there was one thing he knew for sure. This place was tied to his past in a way he could not yet understand. Leah stepped closer to him, her expression thoughtful but tinged with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice gentle, but there was an edge of urgency to it. Ethan nodded slowly, though the unease in his chest hadn't subsided. "I think I'm fine," he said, though he wasn't sure if that was the truth. "But these memories, they feel like mine, but at the same time, they don't." Leah looked at him with a knowing gaze, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she understood more than she was letting on. "This place, this structure, it's pulling something out of you. It's connected to you in ways you can't even begin to comprehend." Ethan turned to face her, his gaze intense. "Do you know what's happening? What this place is?" Leah shook her head, her expression serious. "I wish I did, but I feel it too. Whatever this is, it's far bigger than just you or me. We're part of something much older, something that's been buried for a long time." Ethan stared at the stone structure, his thoughts swirling. "I don't know if I can handle this," he admitted, his voice quiet, the weight of his uncertainty pressing down on him. Leah stepped forward, her hand resting gently on his arm. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. Whatever is happening, we'll face it together." For a long moment, Ethan just stood there, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always been alone in his struggles, the burden of being an alpha king heavy on his shoulders. But standing here with Leah beside him, something inside him shifted. He wasn't alone in this anymore. Slowly, Ethan turned his attention back to the stone. There was a faint glow coming from within its cracks, as if it were alive, reacting to their presence. He stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Leah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out, her fingers tracing the edge of the stone, as if searching for something. "I think we need to unlock it," she said quietly. "Unlock what?" Ethan asked, his confusion deepening. "Whatever this is, this power, this knowledge, it's hidden inside," Leah explained. "We need to find a way to release it, to understand what it wants from us." Ethan hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. The idea of unlocking something so mysterious, so ancient, sent a chill down his spine. But as he looked at Leah, he saw the same determination in her eyes, the same sense of purpose that had driven her this far. Without another word, Ethan stepped forward and placed his hand back on the stone. This time, the moment his fingers touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him. His vision blurred, and for a brief moment, he felt as though he were falling through time, through memories not his own. He saw flashes of battles long past, faces he had never known, and strange symbols that seemed to glow with power. Then, as quickly as it began, the vision ended. Ethan pulled his hand away, gasping for breath. His mind felt disoriented, as if he had just experienced something far beyond his comprehension. Liao was watching him closely, her eyes full of concern. "What happened?" she asked softly. I don't know," Ethan admitted, his voice shaking slightly. "But I saw things. Battles, faces, symbols. It's like the past is trying to tell me something." Liao stepped closer, her expression unwavering. "We're getting closer, Ethan. The answers are within reach." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what this journey would reveal, but one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with Liao by his side. Together, they would uncover the truth hidden in the heart of this ancient forest. The forest around Ethan and Liao seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the air thick with anticipation as they stood before the ancient stone structure. The moment Ethan's hand made contact with the stone, he felt as though a door had opened inside him, a flood of memories rushing through his mind. They weren't his memories, at least not in the way he knew himself, but they felt familiar, like fragments of a life he had lived long ago. For a brief moment, he lost himself in the images, flashes of battles fought, faces he had never seen but somehow recognized, ancient rituals that seemed both foreign and intimate. The rush of visions faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Ethan breathless, his pulse racing. Liao was standing next to him, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Ethan, are you all right?" she asked softly, her voice steady but laced with a hint of worry. He took a deep breath, still trying to collect himself. I saw something," he muttered, his voice distant. "Memories that aren't mine. Battles, people, symbols." Leah's eyes narrowed as she took a step closer. "What kind of symbols?" she asked, her tone thoughtful. Ethan struggled to recall the images that had flashed before his eyes. The symbols had been ancient, glowing with an otherworldly energy. They were intricate, woven together in patterns he couldn't quite understand, yet they felt significant. "I don't know," he admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. "But I know they mean something. Something important." Liao remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the stone. She seemed lost in thought, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This stone, it's more than just a relic. It's a key," she said finally, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "A key to something deeper, something hidden in the past, something that connects you to this place." Ethan turned his gaze back to the stone, feeling the weight of her words. There was a deep connection here, one he hadn't fully understood until now. The stone wasn't just a physical object, it was a link to something far older, far more powerful. And somehow, he was a part of it. "So what do we do now?" he asked, his voice quiet, but filled with determination. Leah's eyes softened as she met his gaze. "We keep going. We unlock the secrets this place holds together." With a deep breath, Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. The forest around them seemed to stir, the wind picking up slightly, as if reacting to their decision. It felt as though the very earth beneath them was alive, aware of their next move. Slowly, Ethan reached out again, placing his hand on the stone. This time, the moment his fingers touched the cold surface, a surge of energy shot through him, far stronger than before. His vision blurred again, but this time, the images that appeared were clearer. He saw a figure, tall, imposing, with eyes that gleamed with an ancient wisdom. The figure spoke in a language Ethan didn't understand, but the words echoed in his mind, resonating deep within his soul. The figure's face was a blur, but Ethan felt a strange recognition. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice trembling. But the figure did not answer. Instead, the vision faded, leaving Ethan gasping for breath. He stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. Liao was there, steadying him with a hand on his arm. "What did you see?" she asked urgently. Ethan struggled to catch his breath, his mind racing with the images that had flooded him. A figure, he said, his voice shaking. A figure I should know, but I don't. The words, they felt familiar, like they were meant for me. Leah's eyes widened slightly. It sounds like a memory, but not yours. A memory from another time, perhaps from the past of this place. Ethan clenched his fists, frustration building inside him. Why can't I remember? Why is this happening now? Leah stepped closer, her presence a grounding force in the whirlwind of emotions he was experiencing. Because you're connected to it, Ethan. To this place, to the past. And it's not just your memories. It's a part of you that's been waiting to be unlocked. Ethan's mind was spinning. He didn't know if he was ready for the answers, but deep down, he knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Then let's keep going, he said, his voice firm. Leah nodded, her expression resolute. Together, they would uncover the truth of what lay buried in this ancient forest. And whatever it was, they would face it together. The moment Ethan and Leah moved forward, the atmosphere around them shifted again. The air seemed to grow denser, heavier, as though something ancient was stirring just beneath the surface. The stone structure loomed ahead, its surface now pulsating with a soft, rhythmic glow. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped closer, the sensation of being drawn in by an unseen force growing stronger with each step. The visions from before still lingered in his mind, but now they seemed almost distant, replaced by the overwhelming sense that something vital was waiting just ahead. Leah, walking silently by his side, was deep in thought, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a sense of awareness that made Ethan wonder just how much she truly understood about this place. "Do you know what's waiting for us?" Ethan asked, his voice low but full of tension. Leah paused, her gaze shifting to the stone structure in front of them. Her expression was calm, but there was a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. "No," she said softly, "but I can feel it. Whatever this place is, it's connected to both of us more than we realize. It's guiding us, and we have to trust it." Ethan turned his gaze back to the structure. He didn't fully understand what Leah meant, but a small part of him knew that they were standing on the threshold of something important. Whatever this was, he couldn't back away now. They had already come too far. He stepped forward again, his hand reaching out toward the glowing stone. The moment his fingers brushed against its surface, the pulse of energy intensified, rushing through him like a tidal wave. His vision blurred once more, but this time the images were different. They were not just memories, but flashes of moments that felt like they were part of a larger tapestry, stretching across time. Ethan saw himself, though not in his current form, but as something older, something different. He saw the ancient rituals, the long-forgotten ceremonies that tied him to this place, and the faces of those who had come before him. The energy surged again, and the images grew clearer. He saw a figure, a man, or perhaps a being, standing before him, its presence overwhelming. The figure spoke, its voice like a chorus of whispers, echoing in his mind. The language was unfamiliar, yet somehow Ethan understood. "The time has come," the figure intoned, "for the blood of the past to awaken." The vision shattered just as quickly as it had come, leaving Ethan gasping for air, his mind reeling from the intensity of what he had just witnessed. Leah was standing next to him, her eyes wide with understanding, though her expression remained calm. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice quiet, but full of expectation. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, still feeling the aftershock of the vision. "I saw a figure," he began, his voice shaky. "It spoke to me. It said that the blood of the past has to awaken." Leah nodded slowly, as if processing his words. "That makes sense," she said thoughtfully. "This place, it's ancient, and whatever happened here in the past, it's tied to you, to your bloodline." Ethan stared at the stone, still trembling from the intensity of the vision. "But why me? Why now?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "I've spent my life fighting, leading, but none of this makes sense." Leah stepped closer to him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Because you're more than just a leader, Ethan. You're a part of something bigger. Your bloodline is tied to this place, to the energy that's been dormant for centuries. And now, it's time for you to awaken it. Ethan looked into her eyes, feeling a flicker of realization deep within him. He didn't understand everything, but he could feel the weight of her words. He could feel the pull of destiny, a force that had been waiting for him to step forward. With a deep breath, Ethan nodded, determination filling his chest. "Then let's awaken it," he said, his voice steady and sure. Leah smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Together," she agreed, and with that, they both turned back to the glowing stone. The energy around them pulsed once again, stronger than before. Ethan could feel it like a heartbeat, resonating through his very being. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment when the past would meet the present, and the truth would finally be revealed. The moment Ethan spoke, the air around them seemed to thicken, charged with a raw energy that made the ground beneath their feet tremble. Liao watched him, her expression calm, but her eyes bright with understanding. She could feel it too, the invisible force that had been building between them, growing stronger with each passing moment. "We're not just unlocking the past," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "We're awakening something that's been waiting for me." Leah stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the glowing stone that seemed to hum with life. "Yes," she whispered, her words laced with reverence. "And it's not just you, Ethan. It's your bloodline. The blood of those who walked this land long before you." Ethan's heart raced as the weight of her words settled into him. He had always known that his lineage was something special, but never in his wildest dreams had he imagined it would tie him to something so ancient, so powerful. As he stood there, the pulse of the stone seemed to synchronize with his own heartbeat, sending a ripple of warmth through his chest. The visions from earlier returned, but this time they were clearer, more vivid. Ethan saw flashes of long-forgotten rituals, of leaders who had come before him, each one bound to this land in ways he hadn't fully understood. And at the center of it all, there was a figure that seemed to be him but not. The vision flickered, showing him not as the Alpha King he was, but as something else, something older, something primal. He reached out to touch the stone again, his fingers brushing against its surface, and the world around him seemed to collapse into darkness. He was falling, tumbling through time, through the memories of his ancestors. But this time, it wasn't just the visions that overwhelmed him. He could feel the emotions, the pain, the strength of those who had come before him. He could feel their desires, their struggles, their very essence surging through him, merging with his own. It was overwhelming, yet it felt like he was being made whole in a way he had never experienced before. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the vision ended, and he was back in the clearing, gasping for breath. The stone pulsed one last time, and the energy in the air seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a strange silence. Liao was standing next to him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "What happened?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with a quiet urgency. Ethan's chest heaved as he tried to gather his thoughts. "I saw them. The ones who came before me," he said, his voice shaky. "It was like I was them, like their blood was flowing through my veins. I felt their power, their pain, everything they experienced." Leon nodded slowly, her expression filled with understanding. "That's the awakening," she said softly. "You've tapped into the legacy of your ancestors, Ethan. The power that runs through your blood is not just yours. It's theirs, and now it's yours to wield." Ethan stood in silence, absorbing her words. He had always known his bloodline held power, but the depth of it, the connection to the past, was something he had never fully grasped. And now, with this power, came responsibility. He was no longer just a king. He was the heir to something far greater than he had ever imagined. The weight of it was immense, but it also felt like the beginning of something new, something that would shape not only his future, but the future of those he ruled. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but filled with purpose. Leah smiled, her eyes bright with a quiet resolve. "Now, we move forward. The answers are still out there, Ethan. And we're not finished yet. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the power that coursed through him, the legacy of his ancestors merging with his own strength. With Liao by his side, he knew they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would uncover the truth, and, whatever it was, they would face it with the strength of their bloodline behind them. The air around Ethan and Liao seemed to hum with an ancient power, the energy from the stones still lingering, swirling through the clearing like a quiet storm. Ethan could feel it deep within his chest, the weight of his bloodline, the legacy of those who had come before him. His senses were heightened, sharper, as though the very fabric of reality had shifted around him. Liao stood by his side, her presence steady, grounded. She had always been his anchor, but now, in this moment, she felt like something more, a partner, a guide, someone who understood the magnitude of what they had just unlocked. "What now?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. Liao looked at him, her eyes full of understanding, as though she had seen this moment coming from the very beginning. "Now we learn. The answers are still out there, Ethan. We've only just begun." Her words were simple, but they resonated deeply with him. He had always thought of himself as a leader, a ruler, someone who controlled his own fate. But now, standing here, surrounded by the remnants of an ancient power, he realized that the path ahead was not his to control alone. It was something far greater, something tied to the very fabric of this land. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his ancestors within him. He was no longer just a king. He was a bridge between the past and the present, a vessel for the power that had been passed down through generations. And with that realization came a new sense of purpose. "Where do we start?" he asked, his voice calm but resolute. Liao glanced toward the horizon, where the forest seemed to stretch endlessly, its dense canopy hiding the secrets that lay beyond. "We follow the trail," she said softly. "The forest will guide us. It always has." Ethan nodded, feeling the pull of her words, the truth behind them. This forest, this ancient place, was alive with history. It had been waiting for them, watching them, leading them to this moment. And now, they had to follow where it led. The two of them began to walk, their footsteps synchronized, as if the very earth beneath them was aligning with their purpose. The forest seemed to open up before them, the path ahead clearer than it had been before. The trees, once gnarled and twisted, now appeared more like silent sentinels, watching over them with an almost benevolent presence. As they walked, Ethan could feel the weight of his lineage growing stronger, the blood of his ancestors flowing through him with each step. The power he had unlocked was not just his own. It was the strength of the generations that had come before him. And with that strength came responsibility. A responsibility to understand, to protect, and to guide. They had come to the heart of the forest, but this was only the beginning. Ethan could sense that there was more to uncover, more to discover. The path they were on would lead them to the truth of his heritage, the answers they sought, and perhaps even to the key to the power that lay dormant within him. But one thing was certain. He would not face it alone. With Liao by his side, he felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would unlock the secrets of this ancient place, and together, they would find the answers that had been hidden for so long. The journey was far from over, but Ethan knew that he was no longer just a ruler on a quest for power. He was a man reborn, connected to the past and the future, ready to shape the destiny that awaited him.